Hey, cheers. Ding. Can you be quiet for the video? Yeah. Okay, cool. Greetings, my friends, and welcome back to the Home Slice. Today, I just have a bit of a conversational style video about just like my changing tastes in EDC and in knives, but particularly in the realm of steel, materials, and sharpening. And this is really fueled by like a bit of an epiphany of sorts. And the thing that I've realized is that I'm really becoming, and am actually already, more of a sharpening guy, like a guy who enjoys just like experimenting and fine, keen sharpening than I am actually a knife guy already at this point. Now, I'm not saying that's the way to be. I'm just saying here I am, like this is where I'm at. And the thing that made me realize this was a recent trip up to Auckland. So we had to go up to Auckland to get Laszlo's passport. And on the trip, we had been in a rush, much like today. I hadn't had time to like shave my neck, but I wanted to look good going into the US consulate and embassy to do our paperwork for that. And the only thing that I had brought was this petrified fish knife.
Go loud.
Yeah, okay. Keep it quiet. This petrified fish knife that was given to me by my friend Alex. It's an awesome little like Wharncliffe 12C27 Sandvik blade, beautiful wood handles, and actually a surprisingly beefy liner lock, almost like a semi-frame lock. It's about, I believe, 0.1 inches. It may be 0.09. I think it's 0.1 though. It's on ball bearings and it has the best detent that I have ever experienced of any knife ever. I am not kidding. It's like crazy how when the detent gives, that thing is coming out of there. So it's a very cool little knife, but simple steel. It's cheap. I think these run 30 to 50 bucks in the US, depending on whether you get them on eBay or on Petrified Fish's website. So a very cool gift from a friend. It's the only knife I had with me up there. I realized I was looking a little scruffy and I wanted to wear a collared shirt and go into the consulate looking well, but I had forgotten my razor. So I lathered up I mixed some aloe with some soap and some lotion, which is all I had, and like lathered my neck up with this sludge. And I took this petrified fish, which was wearing a dual grit edge on it, which is not my shaving-est edge, not my smoothest edge, but is more geared toward aggression and slicing capability. And I'm not kidding, guys. I don't have pictures because I wasn't doing YouTube stuff up on this weekend, but it shaved my entire neck. Now, the hairs weren't like at the skin. They were maybe like 0.5 millimeter long. But my goodness, guys, it shaves like a beast. And the thing is, this is spraying hairs up into the air. I don't know if you can see that, but that's crazy. Yeah, the thing is that this knife was used. It had undergone some use for a decent period of time. I had cut stuff up with it. I had worked with it in the kitchen on that trip. I had put some wear on it, and it wasn't wearing my shaviest edge. And I just realized through that experience, like I love like getting that apex really keen and having that stick around for a little while. And this knife actually delivered that in such a beautiful way. Now, I contrast that with my experience with Sandrin, and Sandrin's really cool. This is a Sandrin TCK that was sent to me by Pete after he destroyed the edge, and I think it's just a scientific marvel to have tungsten carbide you can sharpen, and that's flexible and pliable. It's so cool. And one thing I will say about Sandrin that they nail is I love waistband carry, and this thing sits right there. Like it is not, like it doesn't even exist. It's just like it's gone when you put it there. And that is really, really cool. But one thing that I will say is I've never got this below 200 best, and usually it's up above 300 when I sharpen it, even with lapping film. And I've realized that that's not really a level of edge keenness that's very enjoyable for me. The way that I experience that, I'll see if this will shave any hairs. And no, it shall not. Nope, none. The way I realized that is I was like, what am I going to do with a tungsten carbide knife? So we cut up cardboard to layer it into our compost, and sometimes in the winter to start fires, because cardboard heats up really hot. It produces a lot of ash, but you can then throw the ash in your garden, and it's actually quite productive. So I kind of like doing that, saves some stuff from going to the rubbish, and it gives some nutrition to our garden. So I saved it to be my cardboard cutting up knife. And I would get the cardboard out and I'd be chopping it up and going along. And I noticed that although it has a decent working edge through those pull cuts and sliding push cuts kind of, it actually stopped working satisfyingly after about 20 or 50 cuts. At which point I'd usually get out my Spyderco Military in M4. Yeah, you can have another one of those. Yep. Go for it. At which point I'd usually get out my Spyderco Military in CPM M4. Now, contrasting wise, lowest score I've ever got this to was around 207, 210 best, I can't remember, and it's just barely scrape shaving. Contrasted with, I just sharpened up this Spyderco Military in CPM M4, and I sharpened it down to a mirror edge, took it to lapping film. It's a sharpening method that I'm working on right now. I'm sorry to go on and on, but I took it to lapping film in order to minimize the subsurface damage, to cut down on damaged steel under the surface of the edge. And after taking it to lapping film, I did one edge trailing stroke each direction on a Spyderco Ultrafine, and then one edge leading stroke, and then one edge trailing stroke. The reason I did that has to do with apex mechanics, and I'll make a video about it someday, but it's because the Spyderco Ultrafine is actually an adhesive wearing sharpening stone. It's not an abrasive wearing sharpening stone. I'll make a video about that at some point, I promise, and talk to you about the differences that I can observe and theories about that I'm coming to right now and things that I'm experimenting about. But the crux of the matter is that it got down to 87 bests after stropping, and it is just like the hair isn't there. It's insane. And my goodness, you just never get that. In my experience, I've never experienced that in a tungsten carbide edge before. All that to say, the edge acuity on this Sandrin TCK has just never been there for me. I've resharpened it, I've tried different things. I don't really want to invest in a whole huge set of lapping films. Lapping films are kind of a disposable thing. I want this thing to sharpen satisfyingly on a sharpening stone. You can see, I mean, this edge has cut some cardboard, but it's pretty bad. It's so bad. Versus, this is 12C27. Like, also been used. It probably hasn't been used as much. I know this is like, I know I'm being such a sharpener right now and not a scientific materials loving guy. Versus this is just like push cutting as if the paper doesn't exist. It's just like falling through the paper. So let's do a best test real quick on the 12C27 versus the tungsten carbide. Okay, so best test 12C27 versus tungsten carbide after some appropriate use for each steel. I know this is not scientific. I'm not fussed about it. This is the 12C27. I don't know if I finished my thought on the cardboard cutting, but what I noticed is that the Spyderco in M4 actually cut the cardboard in a more satisfying way for a longer amount of time than the Sandrin ever did. It's like the Sandrin would start at 300, so this is at 131. This 12C27, after use, after a trip to Auckland, after making a bunch of food, after shaving my neck, is 131 on the best.
It's not scared to go down.
$499. They say 500 is the line of where it needs to be, like deathly needs to be resharpened. So 1 gram under. And what happened in the cardboard tests is that I noticed that the CPM M4 was cutting for a longer period of time actually than even the tungsten carbide. And the tungsten carbide would begin to tear through the cardboard. It would begin to cut unsatisfactorily, and it started at, 300 grams on the best machine. So it had a big disadvantage over like the CPM M4, which started, in the, around the 100 mark, and then takes a long time just to get to 300. Anyway, as a sort of last ditch effort, I've bought another Venif stone. This will be exciting for other testing anyway, but so far I had a 400 and 800 grit, and these are, this is 100% diamond concentration. Now that cuts more effectively, but it's not as good for finishing an edge. What you want for finishing an edge is these 25% diamond concentration Venifs. These have less overall diamonds, and they wear the edge more slowly, and you can make more of a refined edge that hasn't been shaped so violently. And I've got this one from their 800 FEPA grit at 25%, up to 1500, I believe, or 3 to 5 micron is the reading. So the thing is I don't really want, and I'm probably going to sell this thing unless I can get from a stone under 200 best. And I'm not going to stress about doing all these special things to sharpen it in a special way. If it just can't simply sharpen like a steel to a desirable level, then I think I'm enough of a sharpening guy more than a knife guy that I'm going to sell it off and get something more enjoyable. Anyway, let's see if we can get this thing sharp. All right, that is about the gentlest, kindest sharpening that I can do with my current setup. Oh, that is still effective on tungsten carbide. Let's see how we're going. Yeah, it's just not there. It's a working edge, but it's not a nice edge. This is my experience so far. Honestly, if I'm wrong and there's a way to sharpen this stuff that makes some sense, please put it in the comments and tell me. I'm really open. I just have tried a lot, and I keep running into the fact that it's just not quite where I want it to be. All right, I think this best test is going to determine whether I am a long-term Sandrin owner. 50, 60, 70, 80... 100.
My feet and hands are stuck like
395. So we've shaved off 104 bests. And I'm just not pleased with that. I think I'm gonna strop this on a bit of lapping film to see if I can get it a little bit less catchy, and then probably sell it off on eBay. Okay, after babying it on the stones, I'm coming back after because I realized that if I'm gonna sell this thing, it has to be somewhat sharp. I don't really want to sell an edge with chips or defects in it. So the thing is now what I would say adequately sharp. It's got a couple slowdown points in it, in the edge, but it's gliding through paper okay. This is after another probably 30 minutes of TLC and carefulness. I only have 2 pieces of lapping film left, so it's just working it very carefully on the lapping film and stones. And I think it'll be less, but to be honest, I'm not really sure. It kind of depends on what section of edge you get and how the Sandrin feels. So that's 230. 230 is an admirably sharp edge. I'll take that. I'll make a little discussion about why I feel the way that I do. That's cutting okay. But you've got to realize that this 230 best edge is actually never going to be as sharp ever as this used budget Sandvik steel. Like, never. It's just, yeah. There's no comparison. Anyway. Thanks, Jim. You're doing a good job so far. Let's be quiet, okay?
I need help.
Just take one. Okay, let's be quiet, okay? Now comes the part of the video where I draw completely bogus graphs to illustrate my completely subjective points about sharpening that normal people actually wouldn't notice at all. I stated in a previous video that I'm beginning to like this is hard, what you call euticoid steel, but like your basic Sandviks, your 12C27, 14C28N, your Nitro V, your AEBL, that have been taken to a high level of hardness greater than 61 HRC. And the reason why is that with these graphs, what they roughly mean is the shaded out portion is the portion where the edge actively makes me happy. The dot portion is the portion where the edge isn't quite making me unhappy yet, but it's not actively making me happy. And the white portion is edge unhappiness, okay? So this is like manufactured ingot steel. Okay, there's a lot of variation in this, okay? This is totally generalized and bogus, as I stated. If you have 154 cm, this may be like stretched way out. If you have 8CR13 MOV, this might be way condensed. But as a general rule, there's a short period where manufactured ingot steel, but not a bad period, where it makes me happy. And then the working edge doesn't last very long before it starts making me unhappy. As opposed to powder steel and most manufactured stuff that's under 60 HRC, in a powder steel, I find that, especially a stainless, sometimes it's harder to sharpen, and so that portion of time where I really feel pleased with the edge is sometimes actually shorter than like with your VG10s, your 154 CMs, your 8CR13 MOVs. It's actually shorter because the edge crispness or fineness isn't always there to begin with, and that's probably due to my sharpening, to be honest, but I'm working on that. Anyway, there's a much longer period of time, much longer, probably twice as long, where the steel is not making me unhappy. I'm like, oh, this is a good working edge. Okay, now if we're talking powdered carbon steel or powdered tool steel, the reason that I carry a CPM M4 EDC is because I find that this portion, it really stretches out, this razor edge portion, because of the fine carbide structure. That's due to having a lower amount of alloys, because stainless has to have a lot of alloy just to have enough carbon to resist rust. So an even longer, usually, working edge range, I find, than stainless. Magna Cut may be an exception to that rule. And an even longer happy edge, like razor edge portion of time than manufactured ingot steel. However, recently I was given a 63 Rockwell Nitro V blade, and what I found is that it actually keeps this satisfying edge longer than my M4, because the steel is so homogeneous, and at that hardness, it really holds that apex in such a stable position. The part where it differs a little bit is that the working edge doesn't last quite as long as like an M4 or a 4V or a Rex 45 or a 10V obviously would be even longer. But anyway, this is really rough, you know, this is sort of rough guesstimations. What I'm finding with tungsten carbide is there is never a section where the edge actually makes me actively happy. This guy, as much of a technological marvel as he is, he just never makes me happy. It's all working edge, and the working edge lasts all the way through the time until I would resharpen. But then I have to ask myself, is that really what I want? Said another way, if you consider this in terms of best scores, where 0 is the unattainable perfection goal, and 500 needs to be resharpened. As we just saw, my 12C27, it started out somewhere around the hundreds, and then it dropped pretty significantly off until just before resharpening, it's getting pretty bad, you know? But the tungsten carbide starts at around 230 or 215 if I really do my job, and then it has a marked drop to just under 300, and then it holds that 300 for a long time. But the thing that I want to note is that, okay, if you resharpen, let's say I really resharpen somewhere between here and there. If I resharpen here, say that's 2 weeks or 3 weeks, then this whole portion of time the 12C27 simple steel has been keeping me happier than the tungsten carbide. Even if I stretch it out to a month or 6 weeks before I resharpen, the area or the time that the tungsten carbide makes me happier as opposed to the steel is so much smaller, and that's why I'm thinking of making this transition. Thanks for watching. If you want to see all the different stuff that I have tried to get this thing to work, check out this video where I try tons of different sharpening stones and just kind of barely get it sharp. Otherwise, I just say, hey guys, take care, peace out from the home slice.